guys, welcome to my YouTube channel, and today I'll go through my AFL mid-season ladder predictions. So let's get started. First up is Richmond. I think they'll finish 18th. They'll finish the season with 3 wins, lose 20 of the 23 games, and 12 points. Their percentage 68.7. I just think it's not their year this year. They won't be up there near the finals, I don't think, for a while. And I just don't think it's their year this year. So let's go on to 17th. 17th, we have North Melbourne. I think they'll finish with 4 wins at the end of the year. I think they'll lose 19 games and get 16 points. I think for the back half of the year, they'll go really well. When they lose, they still put not the worst margin, losing margin, but I still think they won't go awesome, but they'll go alright. Moving on to 16th, West Coast. I think they'll win 5 at the end of this year and lose 18, points 20 and a percentage of 33.3. I think that they'll go alright for the rest of the year. This year isn't very good for them. I think it's like a Richmond. They won't be near the finals anytime soon. And I don't think they're going to go very good for the rest of the year. Okay, moving on to 15th. I've got the Adelaide Crows. I think they'll win 8, lose 14. They'll draw against Brisbane, which they already have. And their points will end up at 34, I think, with a percentage of 98.7. Adelaide, people think they're going to finish higher. I just don't think they're going to finish higher. I think they'll have a horrible end to the season. Not winning many games, but not having a horrible losing margin in a lot of the games. But I just still think they're not going to go very good for the rest of the year. Moving on to 14th, it's I think St Kilda. I think they're going to win 10, lose 13, points 40 and a percentage of 90.2. Well, they haven't had the greatest start you can ask for, but I just think they'll win a few more games, but they won't go awesome. I think they'll go right for the rest of the year. I think last year was a good year for them, making it to the elimination final but losing to the Giants. I think this year isn't that year. I think next year they might make it, but definitely not this year. So moving on to 13th, I think Port Adelaide. They got smashed by Brisbane. People thought Ken Incley's was going to be sacked, and then they beat St Kilda. I just don't think he should get sacked after that game, but I think they'll lose some games, some easier games for the rest of the year. I still think they finish the year on 10 wins, and they lose 13. I just don't think this year they were any good. They're going to be any good. Like last year, they were pretty good. They won a fair few games in a row, and this year isn't their year. I think in a few years' time they'll be premiership contenders, but definitely not this year. Moving on to 12th, I think the Melbourne Demons. So I think they'll win 10, lose 13, 40 points, and a percentage of 94.9. I really don't know about Melbourne. They got smashed by Freo by 92 points in the NT. After that, and losing Petrarca against Collingwood in the King's birthday match, I think they'll lose a lot of their confidence. I think they won't win win many games for the rest of the year. I just don't think they'll make the 8 this year. They're definitely not premiership contenders now after how they've been playing in some games in the first half of the season. They've won a few games, like beating Geelong to lose their run this year, but they've had some bad losses, like losing to West Coast in the WA, and I just don't think this year they'll make the 8, and they'll fall down back to 12th. Moving down to 11th, I think the Hawthorn Hawks. Wow, what a run they are on. I think they'll win 12, lose 11, get 48 points and a percentage of 101.1. Wow, they're playing some awesome football. They are a team on the rise. They will make the 8 for sure in a few years' time. And they might even make it this year, but this year I just don't think they're ready for it. I knew at the start of the year they were going to be good, but then at the start, in the early rounds, they weren't awesome. But then after the Sydney Hawks game at the SCG, they started really well, and then that's when they started their only losing game from there till now is the Port Adelaide thriller over in Adelaide. What a game that was, and I think they'll go awesome this year. For them, last year wasn't awesome. This year, I think they'll go really well, but just not making the 8. Now to 10th, the Giants. They had an awesome start to the year. They've dropped off a bit, and I just don't think they'll make the 8. I think they'll win 12, lose 11, get 48 points, and get a percentage of 104.0. The Giants, they started off well, and then they lost to Sydney in the Sydney Derby early in the year. And then from there on, they haven't been very great. I think they would be a lot more better if they kept that run, and if they got their good players playing really good football. I think they'll be up there in the contenders of the grand final like they were at the start of the year. But this year, from now, I just don't think they've gone awesome. So I just have them just out of the 8, but maybe next year making the 8. Next one is the Brisbane Lions. I think they'll win 12, lose 10, draw 1 against Adelaide, points 50, and a percentage on 116.0. Brisbane, at the start, they didn't start great. The grand final team from 2023 didn't start off great, but now they've won a few games, and they're starting to get their run. They're starting to make a good run here, but they've got a few tough games coming up. So I think a lot of those games from now till round 24 will be tough, and I just think they'll miss out on the 8. But I think they're an awesome team. They've worked really hard to make the grand final last year. I just think they'll just miss out on the 8 this year. Going down to the top 8. Now, Collingwood. I think they'll win 12, lost 9, draw 2 against Freo and Essendon. That's already happened. Points 52 and a percentage of 106.1. They didn't have the best start, and they haven't had an awesome year so far. They beat North Melbourne by 1 point after trailing to them by 50-something points at half-time, and I just don't think they'll do awesome this year, but they still make the 8, which is a pretty good effort. And yeah, but there's nothing really to say about Collingwood. They're a great cultural team. They play all right, but I just don't think they're contenders for the grand final this year. Moving on to 7th, we have the Gold Coast Suns. I think they'll be finals debutants. They've never made it to a finals this year, I think, ever in their career yet. But this year, I think they'll make the finals and they'll go all right in them. I think they'll win 14, lose 9, 52 points and 115.1 as their percentage. They're a great side. They play really well. And I think for the rest of the year they'll play really well too. I think there's some game they haven't won away yet, but there is some games that they can win, like North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium, West Coast at Optus. They can win against the Giants at NG Stadium. There's a lot of winnable games away for the Gold Coast Suns, and hopefully they can win one. But if they don't, and they still don't make the finals, maybe next year. But I do hope they make the finals debut this year, and hopefully they will. So now to 6th, the Western Bulldogs. I think they'll finish with 14 wins and 9 losses. I think with 52 points and 109.9 as a percentage, I think that's pretty good to finish 6th. After not just barely missing out on the 8 last year, finishing 9th and nearly made it. I think this year is their year to be a grand final contender, and to really be one of the better sides like Carlton and Sydney and Geelong and Essendon. And I think this is a year that they can rebuild and get players like Jamara Ugle-Hagan playing more footy, and Aaron Norton, who had an injury early in the year, trying to get him back playing his best footy. I think if they get all of them playing their best footy, I think the Bulldogs will go fine. I think they're a great team, great side, but hopefully this year they make the 8, and because it has been an emotional time for the Bulldogs in the past years when just missing out on the 8. Okay, now going to 5th, we've got the Dockers. I think they'll win 14, lose 8. I think they'll have 1 draw and 58 points. And they'll finish on a 108.5 percentage. I think this is a great year for the Dockers to rebuild and be one of the grand final winners, contenders to win it. They're a really great side, beating Sydney by a point over there. That is tough to do. We can see how tough it is, and they managed to do it. So that just puts Freo in a great position to be one of the grand final winning contenders, and I think they'll be an awesome side coming through these next 2 or 3 years. I think they'll at least win 1 premiership in the next 10 years. But I think they'll be one of the better teams this year and for years to come. Now going to 4th, we've got the Cats. I think they'll finish on 15 wins, 8 lost games, and 60 points with a percentage of 114.9. They're a good side. They play good footy. Beating Essendon by 45 points was a good win for them. But lately they haven't had the best games. Like they're losing to Gold Coast by about 64 points, and Melbourne by a few points. Carlton, they got smashed by. They've had some disappointing games, the Cats, in the past few matches. But I think for the rest of the year they'll only lose 2 games. I think it'll be over in Perth against Freo and against Collingwood at the MCG. But I think those 2 games will be tough ones for both sides they play, and I think they'll be one of the premiership contenders too. Now moving on to third, the Bombers. Wow, what a year they've had so far. They have had a great year, but I think they'll finish even better with 16 wins, 6 losses, 1 draw against Collingwood, 66 points, a percentage of 105.4, and this year is going to be a good year, I think. They've played really great footy so far, and I think that will keep going on for the Bombers. They need to get Peter Wright, Jake Stringer, Cole Langford, who's already had a great year. I think they need to get them playing their best football if they want to be a premiership contender. I think they already are, but they're playing really great football, the Bombers, and I really hope they do well for the rest of the year. Now moving on to second, I've got the Carlton Blues. I think they'll win 17, lose 6, and have a percentage of 116.4. Carlton, they're an awesome side. They've had some really good wins against the Cats by about 60 points, and then they've had some really like horrible losses, but that they can work through and look at and revise how they played, like the one against Collingwood earlier in the year. But they're having a terrific year. I think they'll be definitely premiership contenders, and I hope they make it to the grand final because they deserve it by the way they're playing. They've played really great football this year, and finally to first, I have got the Sydney Swans. I think they'll win 17, lose 6, and get a percentage of 137.0. Sydney probably the best side. Well, is the best side in the AFL right now with Chad Warner, Errol Goulden, and Isaac Heaney playing really great football. I think they'll all step up in the last few rounds of this year, and they'll play really great football. And I just think the Swans are really gonna be the team to beat this year. They are. Got beaten twice by Richmond at the MCG and Freo at the SCG. Those 2 were tough ones for the Swans. Richmond, they should have won that one, but it just didn't go their way that day. And Freo, that would have been a tough one. Logan McDonald had a shot after the siren, and I don't think he made the distance. But they're all games to learn from, but I still think the Swans are going to finish at that highest spot. Now moving on to the finals. Qualifying final 1, I think Swans will beat the Cats 88-76. Elimination final 1, I think the Freo Dockers will beat the Collingwood Magpies 124-72. Elimination final 2, I think the Dogs will beat the Suns 96-94. qualifying final 2, I think the Blues will beat the Bombers 103 to 75. Now moving on to finals week 2, I think the Cats will smash the Dockers 129 to 53, and I think the Bulldogs will narrowly beat the Bombers 75 to 68. Now moving on to the prelims, the most important behind the grand final. I think Sydney will beat the Bulldogs 134 to 103, high scoring match. I think the Blues will beat the Cats narrowly by 1 point, 103 to 102. Now to the biggest day on football calendar, the AFL Grand Final. You must be wondering who will win this, and I will show you right now. So quarter time, I think the Blues will be up 43 to 6. Great start for them. Half time, I think the Swans will fight back and be 6 points down at half time, 51-45. Three-quarter time, the Swans are back. They are leading by 9 points, but it is a good game, I think. It's going to be a really great game from now on, and I think this narrow lead will work for the Swans, but who knows what will happen from here. 10 minutes to go, 69-86. The Blues are up. Will the Blues hang on? Will the Blues let it through the open window? Or is the Swans going to fight back? The Swans are coming back. 11 points in it, 5 minutes to go. Blues up by 11, 86 to 75. 2 minutes to go. 5 points in it. 86 to 81, the Blues are leading, I think. And full time, I think the Swans will win it 87 to 86. And there you go. I think the Swans will win the AFL 2024 Toyota Premiership. Wow, I think, it'll be a great game. I think the grand final in the dying minutes, Carlton fans, the majority of fans are Carlton fans, and they're all on their feet, and the less amount is Swans fans who have travelled all the way from the northern part, up down to Melbourne, and they get the job done. Awards, Brownlow medal. Nick Dacos, I think, will win the Brownlow medal. Rising star, Oliver Dempsey. He has played some terrific football this year, and I think he'll win the Rising Star. Coleman medal, Charlie Curnow. I think he'll go back to back and win the Coleman medal, and with 71 goals, I think. And Norm Smith medal, Errol Gordon. I think he should get the Norm Smith medal after that awesome grand final that I predicted. So thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and please hit that subscribe button, share it with your friends, and please like the video if you can, and comment down below what your predictions are and who you think will win the grand final. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I will be posting more videos soon, but I hope you enjoyed this one. So thank you and goodbye.